Hello, everyone. Testing. Hello.
Hello.
All right. Welcome to the Livonia Club meeting. This is Gordon, KD8COJ. I'll be the one. I'm bringing in everybody. So far, we have 15 participants.
I will be back.
We'll be here. Uh,
I'll remute here in a second, but I'm just wondering how my camera angle is.
Hey, Marcia, tilt it up just a little bit. Nope, too far. Too far. Come back down just a little. Sorry. Okay, hold it right there. Oh, you went too far the other way. Just I know it's hard to, just small, minute.
Perfect.
There you go. That works. We can see you now.
Thanks, Keith.
Yes, ma'am.
It doesn't take much to get it out of focus.
You look beautiful.
Did a fine job.
Well, I will mute.
Okay.
Can you guys hear me? K and 8B?
We hear
Yes,
you.
we can, Michael.
Okay, good. I'm going to mute until needed.
During the meeting, I will actually be going through just to make sure, especially during the presentation, that we keep all of our mics closed during the presentation. If you have any questions, with the chat window is open. We will have someone monitoring the chat window so that we can, at periods of time during the presentation, we can ask those questions and get those in. We have 24 participants now.
Are we supposed to see all 24 or just you guys?
What'll happen during the meeting is as someone talks and takes over, their video will pop up kind of at the top. So if you don't talk, you won't see your video will not be seen.
Okay, gotcha.
I see call signs left and right, and that is a good thing.
That Rick up there is N8XI, and I don't have a camera.
All right, Rick, let me find you here. What is your call sign, Rick?
November 8th, X-ray Italy.
All right, I got you. What we're doing is we're just putting call signs just so we can keep track of everybody who's in the meeting.
Can anybody hear me?
Yes, we do.
W2EQX?
Give me a second.
Yeah, in the video. You have to go down and click. I remember that.
Hi there, Taz.
Hello.
Arthur,
Long
can you
time no
give
see.
Arthur, can you give me your call sign once again, slowly and phonetically?
Whiskey 2, Echo, Queen, X-ray.
I got you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Hey, I'm looking for David. I have no idea who David is as far as a call sign because I'm right in the middle in. Also, do not get notifications.
David, I see a David in the chat here. Can you give us your call sign, please?
Got that. Click it on the left. Mm-hmm. And unmute your mic. Unmute your mic. I had to turn down the repeater. Yep, I'm here.
I don't know if you have a camera.
David, are you out there? Can you hear me?
Gordon, he's got his info in the chat there. He doesn't have a mic or camera.
Oh.
He's a Kilo Echo 8
Give me a sec.
Bravo Sierra uniform.
Give me a sec here.
Down in the right-hand corner of the screen, you should be able to set up your video. You may be shut off right now.
Keith, you're jumping all over.
All right, I got David's call in there, should be.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't know who John Jr. is.
I'm sorry?
I don't know who John Jr. is, and I don't know who Chris is.
Hello?
Chris, do you, I don't see Chris here in the window. Do you have your call sign Chris?
Yeah. You have to click in and then let it go in, and then there's,
Are you talking
Oh, who
about
is
Chris,
it?
NHPVL?
No, I've got yours.
Okay.
Thank you.
No, I'm talking about the rec meeting.
I don't see another. I'm scrolling through my list here.
Well, then I'll have to come on. Yeah.
Oh, there it is. NHPLV.
All right. Okay, well, let me do it. I'll check it out. All right, bye-bye. Bye, thanks.
So we show 25 participants, is that correct?
A
I,
reminder for everybody, please mute your microphones when you're on phone calls and stuff.
I see a Scott that is in the process of joining, but it's not, he's been joining for a few minutes now.
And there's a John Jr.
John Jr., can you please unmute your mic and give us your call sign? Oh,
I've sent it to both you and Doris.
I'm sorry. I saw it just after I asked. Thank you, Keith. Ah.
Jan is missing an 8.
Say again, Doris.
John is missing an 8. It's KE8 AXC.
Yep.
Only Doris would know that.
Thanks for checking me, Doris.
What can I say?
All right, he should be right now.
26, so we're doing good.
I have 27 with one more. The Scott S has been trying to join, but he's not getting in.
Okay, I don't have a Scott. I don't know who I'm missing. Is there a treasurer there yet?
I have not seen Bill come in.
Okay.
So all the officers are there, but Bill.
And no worries there, Gordon. If he's not able to connect tonight, we can always get all that information up on the website behind the member wall there.
Okay.
No problem.
That's okay, because I record all the officers in attendance, so that's what I was asking about Bill.
Oh, Sandy's joining just now.
Is that Matt, KE8MLJ?
Got him.
Neighbor?
Say again on the call, Doris.
Is it KE8 Mike Lima Juliet?
Let me look that up to be
Or
sure.
Matt Neighbor?
Yeah, because we record all the call signs that sign in at our general meeting. That's why Doris is asking.
I'm just double confirming his call.
When I printed out the list, it did not print out the call signs. On the roster.
I've got the roster with all the call signs right here next to me. And I've just corrected Matt's. Welcome aboard, Matt.
So it's KE8 Mike Lima Juliet, correct?
KE8 MLJ.
Okay. Nice to see Mike Tiller there. Nice to see Roy there. Since
Yes, I am.
It's good to see you there. And there's a Frank.
Frank is our presenter. Hi, greetings there, Frank. We don't have your audio though. Oh, let me unmute
Check on
you.
that button right there. How's that?
There you go. Much better.
Okay.
Yeah, we see him.
Great.
It's good to put him on the guest list.
What I couldn't do without my better half.
Who's laughing?
None of us
I
are.
am, for one.
Taz made me do it.
Yeah, blame me. But yeah, Doris is so thorough. What I couldn't do without her, let me tell you.
I thought you were talking about Dane, Taz.
The devil made
Yeah,
me do it.
Dane.
Well, I was actually hoping Doris would help me a little bit with call signs tonight, and I thank her very much for doing so.
Oh yeah, she's the queen of call signs, and Doris tried to tell you that Dane can't be here of all people. Who's an IT guy? He has no internet.
Oh my goodness.
He's supposed to have somebody come out between 7 and 8 tonight.
Yeah, he called us and told us.
Doris saved me today. I had this link saved for ever since it was sent out, and I deleted it by accident. So I had to call her and have her send it to me. So Doris once again saves the day.
Yep, and nobody gets to see my picture. Looking good, Sandy. That's all right.
Oh, Gordon, you there?
I am here.
So I have 29 plus Frank.
Yes, I show 28 in.
What I don't have on, I don't have Scott on the list, but I don't see him anywhere.
Can barely hear you there, Doris.
She's talking from her computer, and it's
Gotcha.
my audio over here at my laptop.
Gotcha.
So do you want me to talk louder?
No, I don't want you to scream at Taz there.
Oh no.
Yeah, but it's a good 6, 7 feet away from the speaker.
Oh boy.
Can you imagine we have to share microphones when we're doing HF?
How do you do it?
Well, we have a rollaway desk in between her desk and mine. We have a desk mic, and we just turning it around there.
Is your speaker on?
Mm-hmm.
You could buy another mic.
All right, I see Mike's video. Mike, let me know when you want to get going. I see about 4 minutes to 7 here.
Yep, we'll start right at 7 there.
Gotcha.
One notice that I found here, for anyone that sees us all in boxes, even when we're talking, you've got to click on the top right, the speaker view button. Then it will automatically show you the person who's actively talking instead of everyone. So when we do the presentation, we'll need to do that so that everyone can see that full screen.
Where, Mike?
If you look up at the top right, very top right corner of the window, there's a button that says speaker view. And when you click on that, you should only see the person that's talking.
And Mike, you should also let them know to use the chat feature if they want to get in.
Yep, I've got that on the agenda here as well. And I believe Mr. Gordon's going to help us out keeping everyone muted, especially because it'll snap to their video if they talk during the presentation.
This is Rick. I don't see that button up in the upper right, Mike.
Oh, are you
I
on an
don't either.
iPad? Are you on an iPad?
I'm on a, yes, I am.
Okay, so it's on the left, upper left, and it says switch to active speaker.
I don't see it on my laptop.
He might have to slide his cursor up there.
Yeah,
Oh,
it
see,
goes
yours
away.
is different.
See, mine's different.
How do you get yours with the little button?
Yeah, Rick's on a laptop, on an iPad.
Yeah, I'm on the laptop. I don't see it anywhere in the left or right. It may
I
say
don't either.
gallery view. You have to click on gallery view.
How do we get yours to look different? Here. See this.
Oh boy.
Oh, somebody's blocking all the screen.
Where'd
What happened
Taz
there?
go?
I give up.
Doris hit something.
Top right corner, gallery view. Click that.
What the heck happened?
We see you.
Does he need to go out and come in again?
No, you're in.
But all we see is Zoom. Just a
Hmm.
big Zoom.
Let's see how to get to that
You
screen.
did it right, Doris.
What did I do?
Right.
We're seeing and hearing Taz and Doris.
Yeah, I'm launching it back.
Yeah, but we already see you and hear you.
Oh, okay. I don't see it on my computer. Whatever Doris did or clicked on.
Sometime you do have to move your finger or just make some motion on the screen to get them to show up. Like it disappears if I move my cursor to
Please
the
click.
bottom of the screen.
Just
And
click.
if I move it back up, it pops up again.
We've lost your picture, Sandy.
Yeah, I know. I shut it off.
Okay, you got it back.
I'm back.
Now, can I try something here?
Oh boy.
Jesus.
All right, so it's 7 o'clock, so we're going to get started here in just a second. Mr. Gordon, since you're steering this ship, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and mute everyone if there's anyone that's not currently muted. So for the presentation, we're asking that, well, for the meeting as a whole, we're asking that everyone keeps their mics muted. It shouldn't be terribly long, and at the end, we should be able to take questions if you've got audio at the end there. If not, we're going to put them in the chat window. So let me pull up the agenda here, and we'll get started in just a second. All right. First up, we've got some executive board announcements this evening. Been getting this question a lot lately. What's going to go on with field day, given the impacts of COVID-19? The short answer is we're not sure yet. It may impact it, it may not. We don't know what the situation is going to be when field day rolls around. So at the current moment, we don't think it's going to be canceled, but we don't know. We're going to have to wait till the chips fall, and we'll see what the situation is in June there. So hopefully everything is a-okay. Hopefully we get to keep our same location. It's been working out really great for us. But keep an eye on the website, and if anything changes, there'll be an email out for that. At the moment, though, we're still playing it by ear. On the same note, Lark in the Park, there will not be one in May. The second Saturday, when Lark in the Park is normally scheduled, that's going to be still inside of the stay-at-home restrictions, so we won't be able to do that. If anyone's got any new business that needs addressed tonight, any announcements, any corkboard items, or any projects that need a helping hand, please put that in the chat window in the Zoom meeting. Depending on what device you're on, the chat button might be in a different spot. But if you've got something that you need to address and you want to work on it now, go ahead and put it in the chat window, and we'll address those when we get to that section of the meeting tonight. All right, on to our presentation. Tonight, we've got Frank Maynard. He's from Novi, November Foxtrot 8 Mike. He's going to be doing a presentation on grounding and bonding. Frank, we're very grateful to have you here. Frank is a longtime ham with an impressive list of accolades on his QRZ page. Certainly recommend going and checking that out. Notably, his extensive volunteering and his roles with the Boy Scouts of America. On the radio side, he works all up and down the bands with an impressive proficiency with CW, and you'll likely hear him on the QRP and CW Ops sprints. So with that, Frank, NF8M, we'll hand it over to you for grounding and bonding.
Let me unmute. Now can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, cool. Well, somebody actually read my QRZ page. What do you know? Good evening, everyone. I'm glad to be here with you. I have a couple of coworkers actually that are signed in. I see Jeff is here, and KB8CRM, and Chuck WV8A, and I don't see Jerry K8GT, but Jerry is my, I call him my re-Elmer. I was inactive in ham radio. I've been licensed since I was 14. And I was inactive for a great number of years, but Jerry kept needling me gently to get back on the air, and eventually I did. And you know, the rest is, as they say, history. I'm glad that that he was able to do that. So if he's not, I don't see him here, but if he does sign in, I guess we'll be able to say hi. So the talk tonight, let me go ahead and get the slide up here. I'm going to share that one, and hopefully you can all see this. I'll pop it up full. There we are. Is everybody seeing that full? Or did I switch off of it? Here, let me.
Nope, we're still seeing you, Frank.
Okay, you're still seeing me. Okay, I guess I have to go back to here, to Zoom. Share screen. Select the screen I want to share. That one. I guess I have to hit the little share button. That would be helpful, wouldn't it? Okay. So here's, let's back up. There we go. This presentation was, are you seeing the screen now?
Yep, we're not seeing it in presentation size, but it's there.
Okay, you're seeing the CTU Presents Grounding and Bonding, right?
We're seeing the overview slide.
Okay, so you're not seeing the full screen. You're seeing overview. Okay, there's overview. Anyways, I thought I had backed up to that previous one. Well, let's see if this works. This presentation was actually developed by Ward Silver, N0AX. He's the author of the, not the Eclectic Technology, the Hands-on Radio series in QST, and also a prolific writer of publications from the ARRL. This was first presented at 2017 Contest University at Dayton at the Hamvention. And he's given it pretty much every year since. And in fact, he's going to be giving it again, even though Dayton is canceled and so is Contest University. There will be a virtual online Contest University with a number of the programs that were going to be presented online. And it's on Thursday, May 14th, and it'll be free. So if you go to contestuniversity.com, you can read all about that. Anyway, grounding is kind of an interesting topic. It's kind of a hot topic, and Ward goes into a number of different aspects here. Grounding and bonding are the two topics that seem to come up a lot. We'll talk about just what grounding is, also bonding and how that relates to the areas of importance: AC safety, lightning protection, and RF management. and I'll talk about why we call it RF management. Give you an example of how ground systems should work, and then some resources. Did that change to goals of the session out there?
No, we are still seeing
You're
the
still seeing
overview
it. Okay, well then,
with the slide tray there.
okay, well then let me figure out what I'm doing wrong here. I don't know. I was able to do this the other day when I checked it out with Gordon. So
We've got the goals now. It looks like there's just a significant delay.
oh, okay. All right. So let's see. Goals of the session, and is it up full, or is it in this box with all these?
It's only about half the window size. Is there a way to make it larger?
Well, I've tried doing the slideshow presentation.
We're seeing all the thumbnails on
You're
the left
seeing
side.
the thumbnails too. Okay. I don't know how I share that. Let me see here. If I stop sharing, it comes back to here. Oh, there's Chuck. I see Chuck now. Okay. Let me go back to share screen, and so I can't really share that. Let's see, share. You're seeing all the thumbnails. Even when I go.
Hit the X on the in the corner there of the thumbnails, right at the top.
Let's see, if I close the whole presentation, then it goes away.
Or view full screen.
Yeah, okay, view. See that either. So, anyway, slideshow. So we have goals of the session. Let's just do it this way here. Eventually I would find it, but if you can see that, most of it is the talk and the presentation. All of this is on my webpage, so you'll be able to get it. So anyways, I hope to help you understand what ground really means. We're seeing goals of the session now, right, folks?
Correct.
Okay. Understand what ground means, what bonding means, what the difference is, and also to point out some of the different requirements for those three areas of importance we just talked about. I'm going to show you some ways you can accomplish this and how a system approach works. And there is one simple solution to the whole grounding program. This talk is really for station builders that are just getting started. Maybe you're going to put up a tower. Maybe you want to improve the performance of your station. Maybe you'd like to get some knowledge about exactly what a good grounding system in your station should be like. If you're a big-time DXer, contester, somebody who knows this stuff already, it's probably not for you. But if you fall into that category, then you'd be a great resource to help others understand this stuff as well. Here's some references. I'll go over the references later. I'll kind of skip through some of these right now. And we talk about what ground is. Well, it really it depends on what you're trying to do. And what you're trying to do depends on the frequency, whether it's DC or AC, lightning, RF, or whatever. And also the voltage of that frequency and how much current is flowing. And you can go anywhere from a few milliamps in the shack to several kiloamps of lightning. Your safety and your equipment both depend on the right answer for that. So what is ground anyway? It can be a noun, it can be a verb, and it can be an adjective. It's either a connection to the ground, like a ground rod or a local reference potential. It can be a verb to connect something to the ground potential, or it can be a type of connection, such as a ground rod, a ground conductor, a grounding system. So what is ground anyway? RF ground, when you think about it, there really ain't no such thing. It's not, and I'll tell you why. Ground loops are not the problem you think they are, and a single point ground, yeah, it's a good idea. We will talk about single point ground systems and how they can be very beneficial to you and how big commercial installations use them. But keep in mind the Earth is not a magic sink that we can pour RF into and have it disappear. The Earth is really a big resistor. And that comes into play here when we talk about bonding and ring grounds. Bonding is a connection that's intended to keep 2 points at the same voltage. If you touch your rig and you touch the power conduit and you get a poke, there's something wrong there. They're not bonded together. It sounds expensive and difficult. It really isn't. It just requires the right materials, the right hardware, and it's part of a key that works in your favor for all three of those areas: AC, power safety, lightning protection, and RF management. So for bonding to work properly, it's got to be low impedance and short at the frequency of interest. Low impedance meaning low resistance, but also low reactance. A piece of wire is an inductor, and it depends on the frequency, but it can act as an inductor, can also act as a capacitor, And so you want to try to keep the conductors big and short if at all possible. It has to be heavy enough to carry the current we expect. In the shack, it might just be a number 16 wire or something like that. The bigger the better though, and it's got to be sturdy enough to survive the environment that we put it in. If we're going to put something outside, it needs to have some environmental characteristics. Inside, you can use strap, you can use heavy wire, you can use flat weave braid. A lot of us have seen that. It's kind of a silver tinned 1-inch wide braid that works really, really well. Do not use the braid that you've peeled from old coax. And the reason for that is because inside of a coax, when the jacket is on, the braid is compressed and it's protected from the elements. But as soon as you pull it out, all those little fine wires are now exposed and they can corrode and they can expand. And it turns into a whole bunch of little wires with resistors and capacitors in between. So it's really not a ground anymore, but a whole bunch of inductance and capacitance. I guess if you want to use old coax, you can leave the jacket on and put a terminal at either end or something like that. But the flat weave braid works well. And don't use flat weave braid outside or anywhere there's water, because it'll just wick up the water and it'll corrode and it'll deteriorate. So outside, the gold standard is a copper strap. The wider the better. 1 inch is good, 2 inches even better. Or a heavy wire like a 14 gauge. And if you're bonding around the building, number 6 gauge is pretty good. So we want to talk about safety. And anytime there's AC power involved, safety first. This is one thing they always tell you, switch to safety. You don't want to be the one that thought it would never happen to you. So be very careful, you know what you're talking about and what you're doing when it comes to AC power. And also remember that your local electrical code is the law. There are many versions of the National Electrical Code. The most recent one is 2020. It just came out this year. But most municipalities and jurisdictions don't use the very latest one because they have to review that code to see how it compares with what they've been using. And a lot of times your local code has provisions for local conditions, like your soil conditions in your community, or whether you have more lightning than some other areas and the lightning protection has to be better. If you don't have a local code, a lot of the townships don't, use the National Electrical Code. You want to get the handbook, not the code book. You can probably find it at your library. If you were to buy a copy, it would be rather expensive. And if you're not sure what you're doing, get a book. This is a really good book here. It's called The Black & Decker Guide to Wiring. I bought my copy at Lowe's, I think, for about $25. It'll tell you, if you're comfortable putting a switch in or an outlet, you're fine. But anything beyond that, you might want to refer to something like a book like this. Or you can bite the bullet. I know we don't like to call for help, but hire a professional who knows what they're doing. I'm a member of IBEW, and most electricians that are in IBEW are very well trained. They go through a rigorous apprenticeship program. You'll get the job done right. We talk about AC safety grounding, and there are several different names for it, but it's got two purposes. One of them is to provide a path to a common point in your system for fault current, such as leakage through your toaster or your equipment or anything that happens to leak. A lot of old radio equipment had a two-prong plug and a capacitor from the chassis to the hopefully neutral side, but if you put the plug in backwards, it goes to the hot side, so you could have gotten current. The third wire ground is the thing that grounds us to earth at the entrance, and it also stabilizes the power voltage during faults and transients by providing a solid 0-point reference. The voltage can fluctuate on either side, but it keeps it anchored to that center point. Now, here's a diagram showing our safety grounding. Out on the pole, you have a center tapped transformer. It's 240 volts across the full winding. Center tap is the neutral, it's the ground, and it's grounded at the pole with a butt wrap. Comes into your house and connects to the neutral bus. And outside of your house is a ground rod, and that connects to the ground bus in your power panel. And then there is one point inside the main bonding jumper rather, that connects the neutral to ground. And that should be connected only at your main entrance. If you have any sub panels, like in the garage, you don't want to tie the main, you don't want to tie the neutral to the green wire ground there. You want to carry them back into the building onto the main panel. There's a reason for that. It's all detailed in the electrical code. For safety grounding, we want to try to tie all of our grounds together on the outside, and I'll go into a ring ground here in a little bit. But there's two ways to connect your ground wires to the ground rods. One of them is using an exothermic weld. Those are very exciting to use. I've never actually done one, but I've seen it done, and it will instantaneously weld a copper wire to a copper ground rod. The other way, a little more accessible and not quite as dangerous, is the acorn clamps or the saddle clamps that are shown there in miniature right there. Those are designed for outside, and they're designed to clamp tightly and to stay tight. If you're tempted to use a hose clamp or something like that, those are not good bonds. They'll loosen up. Stainless steel is, believe it or not, not a very good conductor. It's a conductor, but it's not the best, and so and it will also corrode. So get a brass or copper fitting like the ones that are shown here for grounding your ground wires on the outside. Here we have a typical house that's got the electrical panel on the left where it comes in, and it's got its ground rod. Got your telephone entrance, and it's got a ground point as well. Your cable TV comes in, and it might have a ground rod as well. And then up on top is your TV antenna, or at least that's what your neighbors think it is. And you've got to dutifully run a ground wire from that down the side of your house to a ground rod in the ground as well. And you want to tie them all together. You want to make sure that there's no potential difference between them, because lightning coming in on one is going to try to propagate through your equipment and rather than through the ground. Remember what I said, the earth is a big resistor. And so you want to try to minimize that resistance if you can. I'm going to skip over this part about field day because, you know, like we talked earlier, field day is a kind of a big question mark right now. And this material is in the slides, and you can go look at it if you want. But there are ways that you can ground things out in the field and do it safely. So lightning protection. Lightning is maybe one of our biggest worries that we have as hams. We've got lots of wire and lots of metal things way up in the air, and of course they act as lightning rods. It's possible to have big tall towers and not have them bothered by lightning, or have the bother very minimal. We do it in broadcasting all the time. It's all done through proper grounding of your towers. We'd like to think that we can avoid asking lightning to visit our shack. So the idea is to divert it around the building if we can. Lightning has a very high rise time spike, and that current flows instantaneously. It means it's got a very high frequency, and that's why we can hear it in our receivers the way we do. It's a spike that goes way out into the UHF range. So when we try to ground for lightning, we want a low impedance path to the earth. Any sort of inductance, a coil or a bend even in the wire, is going to cause the lightning to say, oh, I see an impedance here because I'm a very high frequency spike. And anytime you see a coil in the way, it's going to find another way. So inductance is more important. So you want to have a large conductor, and you want to minimize the number of bends in that conductor, or have a larger radius bend so that the inductance is lower. The paths to ground should be outside your house. You don't want to make it easy for lightning to go through your house. Here's an example. Lightning strikes the antenna, or is close to the antenna with a surge current, and it goes to ground right there. That left dotted line takes it to ground through your single point ground plane and into the earth. And you've got another ground rod over here on the right-hand side where your power comes in. And your rig is connected to the single point ground plane, and it's connected to the green wire ground, and the green wire ground is connected to your electrical panel, and your electrical panel is grounded to the ground rod there. So lightning sees another path to ground through your rig and through the AC power system into the ground rod over there. So this is why we want to bond together all of the conductors on the outside of the house. Here's an example showing how that's done. And rather than going in the house and through your rig and out through another ground rod, it'll just distribute itself through the various ground rods that are nicely bonded together. Now, keep in mind that we have a voltage divider, and some current's going to go through, and there's no 100% perfectly safe way of preventing lightning damage from affecting your equipment. So, but you can certainly make a big improvement by making sure that your ground system is well grounded. If you have a tower, it needs to be grounded. You just park it in some concrete and walk away. The recommended methodology here is to have a ring ground around the tower, and then 3 or more ground radials going out to ground rods that are driven maybe at 10-foot intervals going out into your yard. The more the radials, the better, and bond everything together. Bond your ring ground to the ground rod that's there and to the ground conductors that are going out. Broadcast stations, some of the tall towers that might have 30 radials, The AM broadcast stations typically use 120 radials, mainly for a counterpoise, but it also serves as an excellent lightning dissipation system. You'll also want to bond your feed lines to the tower. And here on the left is shown a bracket that's got SO239 feed throughs and the feed lines coming down the tower. Those are grounded at the base of the tower before they go into your house. Consider that a tower might have a few ohms of resistance. And when we're talking about the currents that lightning can induce, we could be talking thousands of volts of potential difference between the top of the tower and the bottom. And if the feed lines are connected to the tower at the top where the antennas are, but not at the bottom, then you're going to have a potential difference at that point. So by bonding them at the ground point before they go into the tower, you can hopefully equalize those voltages and minimize the current flow that travels along there. If you have an insulated tower, on the right-hand side, it shows a crude spark gap. You do need some kind of a spark gap across your insulator. Whether you use one of the commercial, the original one was called a blitz bug. If anybody was a ham back in the 60s, you had a blitz bug on your rig. It was a spark gap basically inside of an SO239 feed through. This serves the same function. It's basically a copper pipe driven into the ground close enough to the insulated part of the tower. The commercial guys do it this way. This is a broadcast station. The ball gap that's shown there is set so that lightning will jump across it, but it won't flash over during normal modulation. I have a vertical antenna in the backyard. I have 40 different insulated radials that run out from it, so that acts as a dissipation system, but I also have a ground rod right there, and it's tied back to the building, and it also has a spark gap. That little yellow thing right there is a spark gap protector there as well. I also have a 100K ohm bleeder resistor from the antenna to ground, and that acts as a static drain so as to drain off any static currents that happen. So what's the single point ground panel that we talked about? Everything coming into your shack should be grounded at a single point. Your power coming in, your telephone line coming in, your internet, your network, Ethernet network coming in, your antennas coming in, they should all be grounded or at least protected with MOVs at a single point. That way everything inside your shack is at a single potential, and you're not going to have potential differences across the equipment in your shack. That's what causes problems. It's sort of an island insulated by this protected zone. So everything coming in should be grounded that way. There's a bunch of different devices that'll do that. Polyphaser makes some very, very good ones. I recommend those. I don't have any interest in them, but I have used them and they definitely work. Triplite makes a very good AC power protector. That's what's shown in the upper left. And there's a multi-line protector that you can use for rotor lines, telephone lines. There are special ones made for Ethernet connections as well. This is a single point ground panel. It's just a piece of aluminum flashing attached to the wall inside of N0AX's barn. Down at the bottom are his rotor control cables, and those are bypassed, wasn't shown in this picture, but they're now bypassed with MOVs to the ground panel. And all of his feed lines are attached to brackets that have feed line SO239's feed throughs on them there. K4RO has this arrangement. He's got a remote antenna switch, and so that tends to ground everything right there at the panel as well. I built my own using a piece of 2x2 aluminum angle mounted. That's the punch that I used. It's a 5/8 Greenlee punch. If you do any SO239 work, 5/8 is the size, and it sure beats using a 1/2 inch drill and a file to get the hole right. Invest in a good 5/8 inch punch. I mounted all of these feed-through SO239s on it. It's up in the ceiling of my basement. All the lines come in that way. The ground going outside connects there. The ground going to the shack connects there, and it's bonded over to the AC power. It's not the 100% perfect best way of doing it, but it works. So for lightning protection, once again, we have these protected zones. Everything coming into the shack, it has to be protected, either bonded to ground or with some kind of a bypass using MOVs or spark discharge type devices. Inside the shack, everything that you have on every piece of equipment that you have in the station should be bonded to a ground bus in your station itself. You can buy expensive copper-clad steel or copper-clad aluminum ground buses that have tapped holes in them, or you can get a piece of copper pipe from the hardware store, drill a whole bunch of holes. I'll show you that in a second here, and mount it. But everything, including your passive devices like your antenna switches, should be connected to that single bus, and then that ground bus connects with a heavy piece of strap or braid up to your single point ground plane. It's all got to be bonded together. We talk about RF. We don't really talk about RF grounding. We talk about RF management a little bit more, because really, when you get a few inches or feet or quarters of a wavelength away from your device, it's not ground anymore. Everything in your station is an antenna, everything including the operator. So everything you touch, you become an antenna. You probably noticed that at some point. So forget about RF ground. Concentrate instead on bonding your gear together. And when you do that, you're equalizing voltage, you're minimizing current flow between your pieces of equipment. And so you eliminate hot spots if you make it a low impedance conductor, like a big strap or a copper pipe or a bar. That also acts as a low impedance reference bus, bonding bus for RF as well. It can help reduce RFI from common mode current. It can help reduce sensitivity to your physical layout. If you have a situation where your keyer goes wacko on 15 meters, but it works fine on every other band, it's probably the physical layout of your equipment that's causing that to happen, and you've got an RF hotspot where it's affecting your keyer. It also gets rid of audio buzz and hum, which was often attributed to ground loops. Ward said that a ground loop is a noise that your mouth makes when you don't know what's going on. So you can blame it on ground loops, but usually it's not a ground loop. It's usually hum or buzz from RF interference. Here's an example of how you should keep your cabling short. Run your cables together along a bonding bus if you have one, which you should. Keep them straight, keep the loops minimal. Don't have big coils of wire or big chunks. I know you probably have fixed lengths of 3 foot or 6 foot, but try to keep them as together as possible in the back. Here's that picture I was telling you about. There's a rig, the tabletop here. I think this is Ward's station again. Basically, there's a foot or so's worth of aluminum roof flashing on the back of the bench that everything sits on. There's a 1/2-inch copper pipe that runs the length of the bench with tapped screws, sheet metal screws every so often. Whenever you need to ground something, put in another sheet metal screw and then bond that copper pipe to your system ground in your station. So the good news is, if we do all these things, we can really solve all of our grounding problems. We can protect ourselves from lightning. We can provide ourselves with a good measure of AC safety, and we can also clean up our RF that floats around, and we have cleaner audio. We have better behaved equipment as a result. This is another diagram showing a ground system. I'm not going to really go into that because you can see it in the slides, and I'm going to tell you how to get those in a second here. Another methodology here where you have a power line coming in, power line protector, and all of the AC power lines that feed off of that, and all your equipment that connects back to there. Drawing of how I did it at my station. And now for some resources. Some of these are really good. Polyphaser has a whole bunch of white papers out there on lightning protection for communications facilities, including some that are aimed at ham operators at ham stations. The Mike Holt website, Mike Holt Enterprises, he has a lot of training and continuing education for electricians. There's a lot of tutorials and videos on his site. Some of it is outdated, but the information is still very current. The FAA has some documents. As you can imagine, the FAA's got stuff that sticks up in the air around airports, and it's usually the tallest object for several thousands of feet around the control tower, so they have extensive lightning protection protocols as well. AT&T has a very good practice called grounding and bonding requirements for network facilities. It was designed for telephone switching centers, wire centers, microwave sites, and everything, and that was kept privately by AT&T for many years. It's out in the wild now, and there's a link there to download it. A lot of it is pertinent mainly to large buildings that have a lot of telephone facilities, but you can glean some things about inductive protection and stuff like that, and electrical protection for your sites. Here's some books. ARRL's got a lot of stuff on the web. There are W8JI. Tom has a lot of stuff on ground systems. He's got some very tall towers and antennas. He's a top band guy, so he's got a lot of stuff on lightning protection. I believe he's in Georgia, if I'm not mistaken, and there's a lot of lightning down there. And then Ward N0AX literally wrote the book on grounding and bonding for the radio amateur. It's a very good book. Get hold of a copy of that book and study it as well. Here's my website, nf8m.com. If you look over on the right-hand side and scroll down, you'll find a link called Presentations. If you click on that, you'll see a couple of presentations that I've done, including this one, and the entire slide deck is there, along with links to all of these references and resources. And I hope you have a chance to check that out. If you have any questions at all, that might answer them for you. I can probably take some questions as well if we have the time. I do encourage you, though, to look up Contest University. It's not just for contesters, it's really for any active ham. There's a lot of information that's pertinent. You know, contesters tend to be some of the best operators because of their dedication to the radio art and the amount of money and time they spend in improving their stations. So if you want to have a better station, do what the contesters do, and Contest University will teach you how to do that. This year, because of no Dayton Hamvention, there won't be an in-person Contest University, but the online session is free. It'll be via Zoom. If you go to the Contest University website, I think they're going to announce the link on May 7th. So go sometime after May 7th and sign up for it. It's free. It's all day on Thursday, May 14th. So take a vacation day, sit in front of the computer. If you're at work, sit in front of the computer and watch the sessions. They'll all be recorded so you can watch them later as well. And Contest University is very generous with the materials that their instructors present. Most of the sessions for the last several years have been archived, and thanks to ICOM are available basically for free, including most of the slide decks as well. But if you do attend 2021, hopefully we'll be able to have it again. It's a great opportunity to meet some of the top people in the business and hear from a lot of luminaries, people who know what they're doing, K3LR and W3LPL and NC0B. These guys live and breathe the radio, and they know all of this stuff, and you'll be amazed how much you'll learn. So that's the presentation. I'd hope to be able to take some questions from anybody who might happen to be able to ask one here. I'm going to stop sharing, and we'll go to the session.
Well, Frank, I'll kick it off. You can hear me, right?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, I was having trouble earlier. Just wanted to make sure. I guess it's not really a question so much as an observation. I've got some of the lightning arresters, so they're called, on my coax before it enters the house.
All right.
And the shield is bonded to the grounding system outside, and it's just a spark gap to the center pin on there. And one thing I've noticed, it's called a lightning arrestor, but I think if lightning ever struck my vertical, at that point, that vertical is just toast. I don't think the coax itself is going to handle a lightning strike very well. I wonder if you've seen any products similar to that where they don't say that they're doing a whole lot, but they insinuate that they might do more than they're actually capable of.
Yeah, well, really, there's no protection against lightning. There's we would like to hope that there is, but there really isn't any way to guarantee that you'll have zero lightning. It'll minimize the damage. It can try to encourage lightning to go a different way by providing a high impedance path to that lightning, and so hopefully it'll find another path to ground. Some of them are also static drains. When you look at the physics of lightning, lightning actually isn't just the big bang that you hear. There is a precursor to lightning, which basically, as the cloud goes overhead, the motion of the cloud in the sky generates an opposite current in the ground, and so a voltage difference, a potential difference, develops between objects on the ground and the clouds in the sky, the water vapor that's up in the sky that's bouncing around and causing all this. So a potential difference will start to exist between your object on the ground and the ground itself, and that is what causes the leader to form that then travels upwards through the air into the cloud, which provides the ionized path for lightning to flow to the ground. So if you can keep that static charge that builds up on your object from developing, you can do a lot to prevent lightning from striking. A grounded tower, a well-grounded tower with a good ground field around it will help. Your vertical being insulated is certainly a potential, has the potential, no pun there, for developing a static charge. So I've tried to quell that with my 100K resistor to ground, but the broadcasters use a lightning choke, which is a large inductor that drains these static charges while presenting a higher impedance to the RF that you're actually trying to pump into the tower. That works at broadcast frequencies because they're only on one frequency, but you'll have, if you do decide to put in like a 10 millihenry choke or something between your vertical and your ground system, make sure that it doesn't have any odd resonances, because those large coils can develop, can also have some self-capacitance. And when you have capacitor in parallel with an inductor, you have a tuned circuit, and that's going to upset your impedance. So you might have to try different values of inductance and different types of inductors, but that provides basically a DC path to ground that helps to drain off the static charge. That's another way to do it. I'm just kind of hoping that my 100K resistor does the same thing, and it has so far been able to do that.
Yeah, this is
hello.
This is Jerry, W9NPI.
Hi, Jerry.
Hi. I've got a 32-foot tower, and I've given a little talk about putting it together, and pretty much what you say. One thing I'm wondering about with these lightning isolators or whatever, have a little gas discharge tube in them. I have fortunately not had any losses. I was wondering how good the discharge tubes work as far as protecting your equipment.
They work pretty well until they burn out, and if you may not know that you've had a damaged protector, you might notice a change in the reflected power on your antenna, and that might be a sign to go out and check it. They do work though. The polyphasers work in that regard. A lot of the alpha delta, I think, has a gas discharge tube in it as well. But do keep them checked, look at them, and make sure that you don't have any carbon arcs or any tracing through them, because if there is current that discharges across them, you might not notice it because you might not be on the air at that time, and your rig is dutifully grounded or on a dummy load, and your antenna is grounded at the shack, but you could still get some static charge through it. So examine any sort of sudden changes in your antenna impedance or your antenna performance, because it could be a sign of damage, and that's lightning damage or arc damage is really only one manifestation of that. You could have bad feed line. You could have a trap that has got water in it or shorted or something. So, best thing is to get a good antenna analyzer, or at least note the SWR at various frequencies if you don't have an antenna analyzer, and recheck it from time to time. Spring is a good time to revisit that because winter takes its toll on our antennas. And if you see any differences, not just like a tenth of a point in SWR, but if you notice it was 1-to-1 last fall and now it's 2-to-1, something's wrong out there, and so you need to start investigating that. But yeah, those lightning those tubes do work.
Should I lay in a supply of those tubes to these devices get obsolete, or companies go out of business?
Well, I don't think they go out of business. They might, but if you have devices like that with replaceable gas tubes or carbon plugs, you should probably have some spares on hand so that you can replace them if needed. You don't want to get on the air for CQ Worldwide and discover, oh, my antenna's shorted, and you spend the first 3 hours of your contest looking for the reasons.
Okay.
Chuck mentioned RF management.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, sure. Anybody notice this? RF management. Laptops in use for digital comms don't have ground connections. So RF can sneak in on USB, audio, and wall wart power connections. Any physical bonding solutions are just a load of ferrite snap-ons. Well, a lot of these laptops do have some metal showing, even if it's just the if there's a DB9 on the back, you can use that. But ferrites can be your friend in a lot of cases. They'll help. Keep a handful of those clamp-on ferrites around in case you need one. I put them on things, and they do tend to work quite well. But if you have the opportunity to ground your laptop, by all means, find some metal and tie it in. So that would be my answer to that.
The thing I found was that, at least on my laptop, the metal case is not the same as chassis ground, and the only external connections I have here are the physical analog headphone combo headphone audio thing, and a set of USB-C ports, which are pretty tiny, so there's really no other way to do it. And the other thing would be to try to a big hose, a big clamp on the side of my chassis. But again, I'm not sure that the outside case of the computer is actually the same as chassis ground inside.
Well, you could always enclose your laptop in an aluminum box and use feed throughs on all of your cables coming and going. Of course, the other solution to that is to run the laptop on battery and use Wi-Fi and anything wireless, but that's not always a practical solution to that.
Yeah, well, it's the connection from the radio to the computer that is most people have issues with.
Yeah, if there's RF sneaking in on that, you can use ferrites to try to eliminate that. But if there's any way at all to bond the computer to some form of station common ground, I mean, even just setting it on a grounded platform of some kind might help. Or I think perhaps you could check to see if the third wire ground on the wall wart or on the power cord is grounded to the ground pin of the DC coming out. It sometimes is carried across. Those switching supplies are pretty well isolated, but the ground might actually be carried through. So that's something else to check for. All right.
It's Jerry again.
Hi, Jerry.
Right. One last thing. It's kind of a cheat, I guess you'd call it. But ARRL does have a pretty good equipment protection insurance policy, reasonable rate, and just in case the vertical antenna vaporizes, if you carry enough insurance on it, you can get it totally replaced with something like a $50 deductible. So that's something else to look at as far as protecting your station.
Yeah, definitely, and it's a lesson learned the hard way. I always carried ARRL insurance, and then they changed companies, and for some reason I dropped out, and I didn't notice that I didn't get a bill, and so I'm now uncovered, so I need to re-up that ASAP. But I did actually suffer some lightning damage. I have a 6-meter beacon. Some of you might have heard my 6-meter beacon on 50.0763. That is located in a building that is near a very tall tower somewhere in Southfield. And that tower was struck by lightning, and it caused a fair amount of damage to some systems in the building, but it also caused some damage to the TS690 that I had temporarily put in as the beacon transmitter while I'm working on the regular beacon transmitter. And I was wondering why my receiver, I went to use it for field day or for Jamboree on the Air, I noticed why the receiver was dead. So I tore it apart and I looked inside. I couldn't see anything obvious. So I sent it off to, I think his call is N4 ATS, works on Kenwood gear. And he said, you have a burned up IF board. So the IF board took a hit from when the lightning hit the tower and came down the guy wires and safely went to ground that way, but there was enough of an induced spike. Now, if I had ARRL insurance, the repair cost would have been covered. And he wasn't able to fix it, but I was able to find an IF board from a fellow in Japan, and I replaced it, and it's working again. So, but it still cost me $150. So ARRL insurance would have paid for that, but a lesson learned the hard way. So yeah, get the ARRL insurance. That's always good. All right. Feel free to email me if you have any questions, nf8m@arrl.net, and do look at nf8m.com for the slides and the links, and I'd be happy to try to answer any questions. I'm not a subject expert on this, but I have quite a bit of practice through my 40 plus years as a broadcast engineer, so knowing what works and what doesn't. Thank you for inviting me tonight. I've enjoyed meeting you, and hope to return sometime, maybe come and see you guys when we can get back together again.
Excellent. Frank, thanks so much for doing it tonight. Certainly appreciate your time. And speaking of the ARRL insurance there, with some of the antennas I've thrown up in quite a hurry there, I don't think they would insure them, but we'll certainly take a look at that. All right. Since we're not meeting in person, we all don't need to take a break at the moment. We'll carry right on to the business portion of the the meeting tonight. The secretary's report is on the website. Next up, we've got the treasurer's report, and next after that is the new members and license upgrades. So we'll hand it off to Mr. Bill, our treasurer. Bill, take it away.
Thank you there, Mike. Everybody can hear me, correct? Okay. For the month of March, we began at the end of the month, we started out with $9,747. We had $73 in membership fees as income, and expenses. We had $26 for the phone for our repeater, and we had $850 for the storage cost. So our ending balance for the end of April, or tonight's meeting, is $8,943. Any questions on that? Okay. As far as new members, we have one new member, Gary Trock, has joined the club. Anything else, Mike?
Nope. All right. Thank you, Mr. Bill. Next up, the 2-meter net report. All right, I've got some notes from Mr. Hero here. Zach, Kilo 8 Zulu Romeo Yankee. He's now a regular net control operator in the rotation. Thank you very much for that. Certainly doing an excellent job. Mark, Kilo Echo 8 November Echo Delta. He sent in some discussion topics to Hero. Those are always appreciated. There's some noticeable uptick in participation during the lockdown. So we thank everyone for joining with that and staying connected, even though we're all certainly apart in these times. Anyone unfamiliar with NetLogger, which is the logging program that we use during the nets, you're encouraged to give it a try. There is a getting started presentation in the presentation section of the LARC website. We're always looking for people who are willing to volunteer as net control, so please contact Hero if you're interested, and especially if you have any discussion topics, we could always use those as well. So anyone that can volunteer as net control, even if you've never done it before and you just want to try it out, please email our net manager Hero at alpha delta 8 alpha echo at arrl.net. Next up in the old business is the Lark in the Park. Due to the COVID-19 restrictions, we're not going to be having a Lark in the Park until June 13th at the earliest. When that's confirmed, the topic will be announced at the preceding general meeting. On to new business this evening. Let's see here. Actually, it doesn't look like we have anything scheduled, so I'll go ahead and stand by in case there's anyone that has any additional new business for tonight. So something that we have not brought up before that we need to address in this meeting. And I'll keep an eye on the chat. We'll give it just a few seconds if anyone's got any new topics tonight. All right, James, we got you down for an item for the cork board. We'll come back to you for that. Just a few more seconds for anyone either on audio or the chat if you've got any new business that needs to be addressed in the meeting tonight. All right, back to the agenda tonight. It looks like the only other thing that I've got on here is the meeting dates, which I see in the chat as well. The general meeting is going to be May 18th. We currently have that scheduled at the EOC. As you can imagine, with the COVID-19 issues going on, the Emergency Operations Center may or may not be available. We're not sure what the restrictions are going to be on May 18th. That's right after they're scheduled to end. So since that was originally scheduled for the EOC, please do not show up at the EOC until you get a confirmation email from us. We're not sure what the scenario is going to be like, so make sure you take a look at the emails and we'll let everyone know where and when we're going to be having that meeting. May 18th is not the normal meeting date because of Memorial Day. The next board meeting is on May 11th, and as always, the LARC 2-meter net is on Thursdays at 8. At this time, we'll go ahead and take announcements first from the members. I'll keep an eye on the chat again. If there's anyone that has any announcements that they need to make, please call now. All right, seeing no announcements there. Next up, we've got the cork board items. So James, I saw that you had an item for the cork board. If you have audio, Whiskey 8 to Whiskey Whiskey, go ahead, sir.
You have to unmute your microphone.
Okay, is that better? Can you hear me? All right, good evening, everybody from the banks of the Banana River. Yeah, I decided to escape everything. Just wanted to give the heads up. I found a source down here in Florida on Pelican cases and the affiliated cases. I'll be passing this info on to Chuck for some information to be passed along. But I'm hoping to be down here for the month of May, and I can fill the Jeep up with everything we got and go from there. That's it for me.
Excellent, thank you, James. So if anyone needs any Pelican cases brought up, where can we reach out to you at? I assume QRZ, you're good, right?
Yeah, you can look for me on Facebook. Text me 734-674-2866. But I got to tell you, Cocoa Beach is a hell of a lot better than Livonia right now.
What's the weather down there? It was reasonable today, but that's still pretty cold, all things considered.
Oh, it was chilly down here, about 84.
It was a little bit colder than 84 up here. Excellent, James. Thanks very much for the info there. Okay, back to announcements for a second. Don't forget the Saturday morning breakfast net is on. So 8 a.m. on the 2-meter repeater. That's at 145.35 here in Livonia. We've had a good bit of participation. It's a good way to still stay connected on Saturdays, even though we can't make it out to Senate. So anyone that's up at 8 o'clock on Saturday, we'd certainly appreciate your participation there. We are looking for a VE on May 27th, but that is still tentative. We're looking to put together a testing session, and we're looking for someone who is a VE who can volunteer for that. So if you can, Mike N8MR, please let him know if you're able to help out with that. All right, looking through the chat here, it looks like we're good on that. All right, so we've got the upcoming meetings that were announced. General meeting on the 18th, tentatively. Please look out for an email before you show up to the EOC on the 18th. The board meeting on the 11th, and the 2-meter net Thursdays at 8. Any further topics this evening before we close down the meeting, whether on audio or chat? All right, going once, going twice. All right, seeing nothing, thank you all very much for joining us tonight. Gordon, chime in there if you know how many we had at the peak there. It looks like we had at least as many people in this meeting as the last one. I'm seeing 31 on my screen, which is a very reasonable turnout for throwing a new technology at everyone.
Yeah, total we had 31 throughout the meeting, so that was the high, and I've copied everyone's info and their call signs. Thanks for supplying those, and I'll get those set out to for a attendance.
Excellent. All right, and Gordon, thanks for all you do to getting this all organized.
Not a problem.
All right, Frank, I don't know if you want to stick around and chat, but feel free. I'm gonna head out though. Certainly appreciate you stopping by and giving us that presentation tonight. That was very informative, and I gotta go take a look at my grounding now. There's certainly some improvements that I think can be made. So thanks very much for your time with that.
Glad to be here.
All right, and that concludes tonight's meeting. Everyone, you're welcome to stick around and chat. I don't know if Gordon closes his window if everyone loses the meeting or not, but I'm going to head out. Appreciate you all joining us, and hopefully we can do it this way if we need to again in the future. Thanks, everybody.